Hospitality has suffered vigorously at the faults of Brexit. We're going to have a look at this exclusive article from The Independent. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, guys, wherever you are in the world. This is REGANELITE here. I'm going to look at this exclusive from The Independent. And it reveals the great Brexit pubs and clubs shut down, and a number of hospitality venues saw sixfold in a year, triggered by EU staff shortages. Brexit is not going away, as you guys are well aware, and the damage is continuing to go along. Brexit is killing the hospitality industry, with a number of venues closing, risking sixfold in just a year. New stock data obtained exclusively by The Independent shows the net closure of almost 4,600 pubs, clubs, hotels and restaurants in year to 31st of March 2023. 4,600. And where have all those people who worked in those places gone? On the dole, some have been fortunate enough to find jobs. And some probably have lost everything as a result of this. The 12 months followed the ending of COVID restrictions laid bare the devastating impact of staff shortages caused by Brexit, as well as the cost of living crisis. The figure compares to just 678 closures in a year to March 2022. 678 at the end of the year, March 2022. And amounts to an average of 12.6 closures a day, with independent family-run businesses taking the biggest hit. Of course, because they don't have as much money as bigger industries. How many of you are watching this now, and you go to walk along your high street and you always see one closed commercial building, 5 maybe closed commercial buildings, some that have been closed for a very long time, because someone wants to start a business, but it just costs too much money to run that business, and the energy bills are too high to have it. Hence why there's the stories of Iceland planning to close lots of stores, because it costs an absolute fortune for them to run those freezers, for example. Everything costs money. There's no point having a business if you can't make any profit, which is all the more reason to put people off investing in the UK. Britain now has 13,793 fewer pubs, bars, hotels and restaurants and nightclubs than any other licensed premises than it had 3 years ago. This represents a 12% contraction in the UK hospitality sector, and is more than twice the 6,400 net closure record in the 3-year period before Britain's withdrawal from the EU on the 31st of January 2020, the onset of the COVID pandemic a few weeks later. More than 30% of nightclubs have gone to the wall, half of them in the past 12 months, while 1 in 12, along with 5% of sports and social clubs, ceased trading in the same period. Many owners have cited persistent staff shortages since leaving the EU as the main reason they had to close. So when we had, when we had COVID, obviously, and everybody was kind of forced to stay at home, lots of obviously EU nationals who were living in the United Kingdom basically went back to their countries and couldn't come back in as a result of Brexit, obviously, because of the paperwork and all that came with it. So a lot of those staff that we had essentially couldn't come back. So that's also had a massive impact in the hospitality sector. There are currently 142,000 unfilled jobs in the accommodation and food service sector, according to the Office of National Statistics. This represents a 6.5% job vacancy rate, which is almost 50% above pre-pandemic levels, and it's the highest rate across all UK business sectors. 50%. Insane. Absolutely insane. Chief restaurateur Mark Hicks announced with heavy heart last year that he was closing his Dorset pub, the Fox Inn, because staff shortages. Hicks said that despite the end of COVID, the challenges simply continue, with rising costs and a difficulty to recruit like I've never known in my whole career. Weymouth Fish and Chip shop Fish and Fritz shut last month, also citing a lack of staff. Owner Paul Hayes said the closure was not due to cost hikes or lack of business, but rather they just can't find enough staff to keep it open. We need we need more staff. We need more bodies. And to say, oh, the Brits will take up the roles. Well, it's for some people, it's there's not enough of us anyway, and to say that, oh, Brits can take these jobs, for them it might not be, the money is not worth it yet to them. It might not be. So whereas those from the EU and those from other non-EU citizens who have done jobs that we Brits haven't done, it's good money for them, but for us it's not as good money. And this country was built on immigrants. It's important to remember that as well. My Michelin Guide Gasco pub, the Muddy Duck in Oxfordshire, has ceased trading because it was unable to replace a departing chef team despite trying for 3 months. And Fen, one of Fulham's top-rated restaurants, is to shut this weekend due to ongoing staff shortages that kept the restaurant open untenable. Lord Heseltine, the former Deputy Prime Minister who campaigned for the UK to remain in the EU, said, "This is happening throughout the economy. Brexit is a disaster and increasingly people are saying so. Quite obviously we benefit immensely from access to the qualified European labour pool that has been denied to us with these consequences." Yeah, that's without a doubt. Without not access to the single market as well, but just not having the people in place is just hurting us really hard. The quicker Britain wakes up to the independence of this country, with Europe finds a way of accessing single market again, the better our economy will be. Yes, I think we can all agree with that. Economics says staff shortages are mostly due to post-Brexit immigration policies, which stop freedom of movement from labour from the EU, making it difficult to bring in low-paid workers. Yeah, low-paid workers, as I mentioned, obviously. You're not going to get Britons to do that job if the money's not worth it to them. That's just the reality of it. Just have to face the reality on that. Brexit has led to less trade and lower growth, with the UK's economy 5.5% poorer than it would have been if Britain had stayed in the EU, according to a study by the Centre for European Reform. This amounts to 40 billion in loss in tax revenue, 40 billion down the drain. That 40 billion could have gone somewhere, like, I don't know, maybe like our NHS, that kind of needs more funding. The Office of Budget Responsibility said trade volumes are 7% lower than if we had remained in the EU. Jonathan Paltz, a Professor of Economics and Public Policy at the King's College London and a Senior Fellow at the Think Tank UK in a Changing Europe, told The Independent that lower paid sectors have been the big losers in the post-Brexit immigration arrangements. He said the government would never openly admit it, but the consequences of their state aim to move to a high-wage, high-skilled economic and shrink lower-wage economy, that is that a significant number of low-wage employees like hospitality companies will go bust, as they simply do not have the wiggle room to adjust paying higher wages. Exactly, like I said, Brits will not take these jobs unless they are paid a decent amount of money, and that's just the reality of what it is. And if that means that companies have to fork up the costs, then where do they pass that on to? The consumers, obviously, and we end up paying more as a result, normal ordinary people. Ministers will never say that some pubs and hospitality companies will go to the wall as a result of their immigration policy, but that is exactly what their policies are designed to achieve. Excuse me. Jonathan Thomas, a Senior Fellow at the Social Market Foundation think tank, says, "It was totally envisaged that the end of the EU freedom of movement would cause job vacancies in sector reliance on low-wage EU workers. It seems to be the government's view that hospitality, which grew substantially pre-Brexit, will be collateral damage, that it will be a contract and it will be smaller sectors than it was. The new figures on closures compiled by consultancies CGA and NIQ and Alexa Partners revealed that poorer cities such as Aberdeen and Birmingham have suffered more, losing 19% and 17% respectively from their city centres licensed premiers in the past 3 years compared to more affluent cities such as Bristol, which has lost 1.5%. The picture in London is more patchy, but the overall city has endured a net decline of 15%. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has said our worldly hospitality industry is a key driver in London and the UK's economy, but many pubs, restaurants and other venues have been extremely hard by the impact of Brexit, with changes to immigration rules making it harder to recruit workers. With the ongoing cost of living crisis, this vital sector is facing an unprecedented and potentially catastrophic set of challenges that need to be addressed by ministers now. Yes, it needs to be addressed. Without a shadow of a doubt, we can't just keep sitting on this. Tony Wilson, director of the Institute of Economic Studies, says we are one of the only major economics in the developed world with less people employed now than ever before the pandemic began. It is clear that Brexit has held back growth, but it has also made equality worse, with parts of the country more impacted by staff shortages and closures than others. The government has used the shortage occupation list to create exceptions and make it easier to recruit low-wage workers, but while this has been used to help out the construction and social care workers, it has not been extended to hospitality. Trade bodies said immigration reforms are critical. UK Hospitality Chief Executive Kate Nicholas says these results are stark. We need to see significant support from the government in the form of urgent action on the labour market and energy. Staff shortages have plagued the sector for years, with vacancies 48% higher than pre-pandemic levels. The government must take action to change the immigration system. Exactly. We have to do something. We need when I don't think it's a case of if. I just think when Labour do finally get into power, they are going to be forced to change the rules on immigrants coming to this UK. They're going to have to, because if they want to grow the economy, they're going to have to let people in. That's just an inevitable thing. They're not going to be able to get around it. The economy can't grow without people, and we've shutted ourselves from the world, and we are suffering as a result of being shut out from the rest of the world. And it's just going to happen one way or another. Labour MP Diane Angela Eagle, the former Shadow Business Secretary, said we need to look beyond quick fixes to the immigration system. What seems to be happening is that most of our economic growth is because of increased migration. Yet at the same time, the government grandly announced they want to reduce it. There is anything incoherent about the government's approach, which creates uncertainty for businesses as they plan ahead. So let me just point out with the immigrants that have been coming across on the boats, for those who may not know, they can't work. They're not allowed to work. They have to sit and stay in those hotels or accommodations that are provided by the Home Office while their asylum claim is being processed, which can take up to 2 years, even more than that. So there's workers there who can't contribute and are just sitting there because their process hasn't been claimed. There is potentially our workers, but no, we don't have apparently because of austerity that we've had in the last 13 years, that has contributed to reductions in the civil services in places like the Home Office, where there are less people being able to process asylum seeker claims. Hence why we have such a huge amount of migrants sitting in places not doing absolutely anything with their lives, because they're not allowed to work until their claim has been processed and it's been accepted. So we're in desperate need of workers, and our workers are right there, and we can't take them because the government says, no, you can't work. You tell me what's wrong here. Carl Cheshire, director of the CGA by NIQ, said without sustained help to tide the sector through the current crisis, with many more closures are likely over the rest of 2023. Graham Smith, managing director of Alexis Partners, added that their joint study revealed that on the current treads, the total number of licensed venues, which currently stands at 101,315, employed of over 2.2 million people, was set to fall below 100,000 this year for the first time in decades. Jesus, 100,000. 70% of employers think that restricted access to labour is a threat to their competitors and will be in the next 5 years' time, according to a poll published in the CBI report last year. Nearly half of the businesses said they want the government to grant temporary emergent visas for roles in obvious shortages. Of course they do. They're crying out for workers. And research carried out by think tanks for the Central for European Reform and UK are in charge in Europe suggests that Brexit has led to a shortfall in 330,000 people in the UK labour force, mostly in the low-skilled economy, compared to how things would have been if we had stayed in the EU. Of course, the damage would not have been as bad if we had stayed in the EU. Luke Wasserman, co-owner of Fen, which opened in 2018 and got a reboot off the back of COVID, said staffing had been an ongoing issue. He said, prior to Brexit, I believe things were very different. We had 10 good candidates per job before we left the EU. Now we are lucky if anyone turns up. It's a consistent battle and especially upsetting because people have put in 60 hours a week and we have built such a review reputation. But the truth is that while COVID was big, Brexit has been massive. You can look at all the closures going on countrywide and you can see, yeah, this is definitely an issue. Yeah, guys, so Brexit is part of this problem. Now, people will argue, of course, that pandemic, cost of living crisis, war in Ukraine, other global factors. There's always going to be other global factors when it comes to the economy and staff shortages and climate, of course. But Brexit was a self-inflicted damage done to our country. Yes, you can argue that, yes, the people voted to leave the European Union. But people didn't tick in that box expecting us to be cut off completely from the rest of the world. And that's not what was put on the box here when people had done that. People were told that they would not be leaving the EU single market. People were told that nothing was going to change in terms of our big relationship with the EU. People were told a lot of things and made a lot of promises. And now you look back on it now, there is a huge, deep regret from the nation about this. And looking at our hospitality, it's very disheartening to see businesses. I live in London, and even I see, shut up shops. And I've travelled to many places as well, and I see it's far worse in obviously outside of London, and I see shut up shops that have not been open for a very long time because people can't afford. Where is the incentive? Where is the encouragement for people to start a business and run a business in the UK? There isn't that incentive right now. Everything just costs too much, and we're discouraging our generation. And those who want to those who are in college and universities and all that kind of stuff, they're more encouraged to go abroad and not stay in the UK now, because why would they want to when they're being cut off from the rest of the European Union as a result of the impact that Brexit has had? So, we've got to keep talking about these issues, and we have to keep putting the feet on Brexit. Yes, other factors are involved, but Brexit is the main one. Numbers and statistics don't lie. Literally go down and ask the people there in person. Don't just take my word. Don't just take the word of what articles and newspapers and say. When businesses are saying that things are costing more, or they don't have enough staff, all these kinds of things, they will say it's because we left the European Union. So guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Even though it is a sad state of affairs, it's important to talk about these things. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and I hope you guys have a great day. Take care and goodbye.